The message came in at 0400 Coalition Standard. Not that anyone from Earth cared about Coalition Standard, but Legate Vreth did, and Vreth was the one sitting alone in the operations center staring at the transmission like it had said something personally offensive to him. 7 personnel. That was what Earth sent. He had requested senior military leadership and Earth had responded with 7 names, a shuttle ETA of 40 hours, and nothing else. No aid list, no communication staff, no medical team, no security detail, just 7 names and a docking clearance request for Bay 7. Vreth read the message 4 times. The 4th time did not help. He pulled the personnel files and laid them across his display screen one by one. Reyes, Commander Sarah, listed first, and her file was the one that made him stop and go very still in the way that large animals go still when something nearby does not smell right. Active engagements, 4. Theaters of operation, 3 continents. Citations, 11. Psychological evaluation status, redacted. He did not know what redacted meant in this context. In Coalition filing systems, redacted meant classified above his clearance level, but this was an Earth document and Earth did not have clearance levels that applied to him, which meant someone on Earth had chosen to hide that particular piece of information deliberately, on purpose, knowing he would see the gap and not be able to fill it. He moved to the next file. Okafor, Sergeant Major Emeka, the second name, and his file was shorter but denser somehow, packed with incident reports written in the kind of flat military language that only gets used when what actually happened is too much to describe plainly. Engaged hostile force at close range. Maintained position under sustained fire. Casualty assessment conducted under active engagement conditions. All of it calm on the page in a way that Vreth found more unsettling than any dramatic description would have been. 7 files total. Vreth read all of them. When he was done, he sat in the dark operations center for a long time and then he wrote 4 words in his observer log. Asterisk, they are not generals asterisk. He did not yet know what word to use instead. The shuttle docked at 1600 and Vreth stood at Base 7 with a formal reception line. For Coalition officers in dress uniform, the standard welcome ceremony for Allied military leadership, the kind of protocol that communicated asterisk we take you seriously asterisk without anyone having to say it out loud. The airlock cycled. The 7 humans came out. Vreth's first thought, arriving before he could stop it or organize it, was that they moved wrong. Not wrong like untrained or injured. Wrong like every room they entered was a room they were already halfway through. Leaving, like their eyes went to exits before they went to faces, like their bodies stayed oriented toward open space even while they were standing perfectly still, like some part of them was always running a calculation that never quite came back with a comfortable answer. Commander Reyes came first, medium height, dark hair going silver at the edges, wearing a uniform that fit like it had been argued into submission through repeated wear, and she extended her hand for the greeting the way someone reaches for a familiar tool, automatic and without ceremony. Her grip was calibrated. Vreth felt this immediately, calibrated to exactly the pressure that communicated respect, not 1 unit more, not 1 unit less, a handshake that gave nothing away because she had decided in advance exactly how much it would give. Legate, she said. Commander, he said, welcome aboard the Sen Ascendant. We are deeply honored to have Earth's senior leadership join us at this critical juncture in the coalitions. Where's the briefing room? She said. Not a question. The rest of the welcome ceremony lasted for more minutes because protocol required it and Reyes stood through it the way a wall stands through weather, present, solid, waiting without impatience for it to be finished. Behind her, the one named Okafor scanned the ceiling of the docking bay with the expression of a man conducting a private inspection that no one had asked him to conduct and that he was going to conduct anyway. The briefing room held 12 coalition admirals and the full strategic display, 8 months of Vorkai border collapse rendered in red across a star map that covered an entire wall, each lost system marked with a timestamp and a casualty figure that the admirals had stopped reading aloud weeks ago because reading them aloud made the numbers too real to keep working. Admiral Sereth, the coalition's senior commander, old enough that his species' natural coloring had faded from deep violet to a pale grey-blue, decorated enough that his uniform had run out of space for new medals. Began the presentation. Slide 1. Initial Vorkai contact. Slide 2. The first border incursion. Slide 3. The coalition's first fleet response and what it did not accomplish. Slide 4. Projected expansion of the. Stop, Reyes said. Sereth stopped. The room went very quiet. Where are they weakest? Reyes said. 12 admirals processed this, processed the fact that slide 4 was still context, still background, that there were 28 more slides of context before the question of enemy weakness was scheduled to appear, and none of them said anything because something about the way she had said it made saying anything feel like the wrong move. I'll read the background on my own time, Reyes said. Right now I need to know where they're weakest. The second time she said it, the room understood it was not going to become a third time. Sereth looked at her for a long moment, a moment where a very experienced commander quietly recalibrated something fundamental, and then he moved to slide 27, which showed the interior Vorkai supply infrastructure, the deep territory relay points that had never needed defending because nothing in the Coalition's 8-month campaign had come anywhere near reaching them. Reyes looked at slide 27. She looked at it for 45 seconds without speaking. Good, she said. Now we can work. That night Vreth returned to his observer log. He had written 4 words the previous night and now he needed to add something, but he was not sure what. He thought about the briefing, about 12 decorated admirals and 1 human commander who had stopped the presentation on slide 4 and redirected it with a single sentence, about the way she had stood through the welcome ceremony with exactly the patience of someone who understands that some things have to be endured before the real thing can begin. He thought about the grip of her hand. He thought about redacted. He typed for 6 minutes. Deleted it. He typed 4 words. Asterisk I do not know yet asterisk. He closed the log and went to the observation port and looked out at the Vorkai border, at the red line made real in the dark between stars, at the space where Coalition systems used to be, and he stood there for a long time trying to build a sentence about what kind of creature stops a 40-slide briefing on slide 4 and says asterisk good, now we can work asterisk. He could not finish the sentence. He was going to need a new word. He did not have it yet. The humans were supposed to observe for 2 weeks. That was the standard Coalition onboarding protocol for Allied military personnel. 2 weeks of orientation, guided tours of the ship systems, supervised integration with existing tactical teams, a structured schedule designed to ease the transition, and build mutual familiarity before anyone touched anything important. The humans observed for approximately 40 minutes. Then Okafor walked past the secondary defense grid on Deck 7, stopped walking, tilted his head like a dog hearing a sound at the wrong frequency, and started reconfiguring it. He had not been asked to. He had not been given authorization to. He had simply looked at it while walking past and seen something wrong, and his hands had moved before his thinking had finished catching up to his hands. Lieutenant Sova of the Sen, young, recently rated, assigned to monitor the human delegation during orientation, stood behind him and watched him work and did not know what to say because nothing in her orientation protocol covered this specific situation. "What are you doing?" she finally said. "Fixing it," Okafor said, not looking up. "That grid has been configured by Coalition engineering staff with." "It's got a gap," Okafor said. "Right here. See this angle? Anything coming in on a 30-degree variance from the primary approach vector goes right through it. No contact." Sova looked at the gap. She had walked past that grid every day for 8 months. She had not seen the gap. The grid had been configured by Coalition engineering staff with 7 years of combined experience, and none of them had seen the gap. "How did you notice that?" she said. Okafor shrugged, a small movement, economical, and said, "I've done this before. The grid configuration." He looked at her then, a brief look, the kind where someone decides how much of a real answer to give, and something moved across his face, not sadness exactly but the flat cousin of sadness, worn so smooth from long carrying that it barely showed. "Something like it," he said, and went back to the grid. In the mess hall the humans ate together. Not because they were unfriendly. Several of them had already made what looked like genuine attempts at conversation with Coalition crew members, but because there was a quality to the way they ate together that was different from ordinary social behavior, a decompression quality, a pressure release quality, the way soldiers who have been performing all day finally take the performance down a level when the audience leaves. They laughed constantly. This was the thing the Coalition crew could not map. They laughed about the briefing, about a term Sereth had used that apparently meant something different in one of the human languages, and they laughed about the food, which Okafor described as tasting like something that wanted to be rice and got halfway there and gave up, and they laughed about the Vorkai carapace density reports, which one of the 7, a quiet woman named Diaz, said were a real problem for anyone who likes things to be easy. The laughter was not at anything funny. Vreth sat near them once, close enough to observe without making it a formal observation, and tried to understand the humor and could not, and sat with that inability for a long time before he began to understand that the laughter was not about content. It was not about what was funny. It was about the fact of being alive to laugh at all. Every joke was the same joke underneath. Asterisk, we are still here. We are still here. Can you believe we are still here? Asterisk. And the laugh was the punctuation on that sentence, the exhale at the end of a breath held too long. Vreth ate his food and said nothing and filed it away. The planning session. On day 6 was where things shifted. Admiral Sereth had organized a joint strategic review, coalition commanders and the human delegation going over the current Vorkai positions together, a good faith attempt at real integration, and it was going well, professionally and carefully, until Captain Tharrell spoke. Tharrell was four-armed, decorated, the kind of officer who had climbed to his rank through a combination of genuine ability and political sharpness, and he had run 40 engagements across 3 coalition conflicts, and he knew it, carried it the way some people carry credentials, just slightly forward where you could see them. In my experience, Tharrell said, a commander who has seen true war understands that the first priority in any engagement is the preservation of command structure. Without leadership, the force cannot function, and so the safeguarding of senior personnel is not cowardice but tactical necessity. He kept going. Reyes let him finish. She sat with her hands flat on the table and her face neutral, and she let him finish every word of it. Then she pushed back her sleeve. Her left forearm, from wrist to elbow, carried a scar that ran in a clean, deliberate line, the geometry of something done on purpose by someone who knew what they were doing, not shrapnel, not accident, a precise and intentional mark that told a story she was not telling. She said nothing about it. The scar was just there, visible, a 2-word sentence in a language Tharrell did not speak and could not translate but could absolutely hear. Continue with your point, Reyes said. Tharrell did not continue with his point. The room moved on. That evening Sova found Okafor at the observation port on Deck 9, the one that faced the direction of the fallen border systems, the 3 coalition worlds the Vorkai had consumed in the past 8 months. He was just standing there looking at the stars in that direction the way people look at things that used to be something else. Are you all right? She said. Yeah, he said. She stood beside him for a moment. Did you know anyone there? She said, meaning the lost systems, meaning the people who had lived and worked in those 3 worlds before the Vorkai tide had come in. Okafor was quiet for a moment. I know people everywhere, he said. That's the problem with being alive too long. He said it without self-pity, without drama, the way someone states a weather condition. It is raining. That is the situation. Here we are in the rain. Sova did not know what to do with that. She had the feeling, standing next to him, that he did not need her to do anything with it, that he had already done everything that needed doing with it a long time ago, filed it somewhere functional inside himself, and was now simply living in the same body as the filing. She left him there. He stayed until the lights on that deck cycled to night mode, looking at the stars where the systems used to be, and then he went to bed. Vreth wrote in his observer log that night for a long time. His previous entries had been 4 words, then 4 more words. This one ran longer because he was trying to describe something he did not have a category for, and when you do not have a category you need more words to circle the thing from the outside. He wrote about the defense grid and Okafor's hands moving before his thinking caught up. He wrote about the mess hall laughter and what was underneath it. He wrote about Tharrell and the scar. And what the scar had done to the room without saying a single word. Then he stopped. He read back what he had written. He deleted most of it. What remained was 1 paragraph. Asterisk, I have been attempting to identify what makes the human delegation unsettling to coalition personnel, not hostile, not threatening in behavior, but unsettling in a way that I cannot stop noticing, and I believe I have an initial hypothesis. They are not afraid of us, they are not afraid of the Vorkai, and I am not certain they are afraid of anything in this room or on this ship or in this war that is not human, and I do not think this is arrogance. I think it is something else, something that comes from somewhere specific, and I am not yet certain. I want to know where. Asterisk. He saved it. He did not sleep well. The humans, down the corridor, slept fine. 3 systems fell in 6 days. Not slowly, not in the grinding accumulative way the Vorkai had been moving for 8 months, fast, one after the other, 3 coalition border worlds gone in less than a week. The timestamps on the loss reports so close together that when Vreth first saw them on the strategic display he thought there was an error in the data. There was no error. The Vorkai had shifted from accumulation to acceleration, and no one in the coalition had predicted it, and no one in the coalition had a ready answer for it, and so Coalition Command did what it always did when it did not have a ready answer. It convened an emergency session in the largest briefing room on the Sen Ascendant and put everyone in the room and hoped that many minds together would find the thing that each mind alone had missed. 12 admirals, 22 senior commanders, the full coalition's strategic staff, and 7 humans in the back of the room, sitting in a row, listening to all of it. Vreth watched Reyes during the session, watched her face while Sereth walked through the new projections, which showed complete border collapse in 30 days if nothing changed, which showed the third-tier coalition worlds becoming vulnerable in 40, which showed a future that the admirals kept describing in careful measured language as highly concerning, because highly concerning was easier to say than what it actually was. Reyes listened to all of it. She listened to every slide, every projection, every careful measured word. Then she stood up. "Can we talk about what you've been doing wrong?" she said. The room went a particular kind of quiet. Not the startled quiet from slide 4. The room knew her now, knew how she operated, had 12 more days of watching her operate to inform them. This was a different quiet, the quiet of 12 admirals and 22 senior commanders deciding whether to be offended or whether to listen, and the fact that 3 systems had fallen in 6 days made the decision faster than it might otherwise have been. "Go ahead, Commander," Sereth said. Reyes did not use slides. She had a single sheet of paper, actual physical paper, handwritten, which generated a low ripple of confusion through the room because no one in Coalition Command had used physical paper in strategic presentations for 40 years, and she held it and talked from it, and the paper had 3 points written on it in handwriting that was small and precise. Point 1. The Coalition had been responding to Vorkai movements for 8 months. Every Coalition action had been a reaction to something the Vorkai did first, which meant the Vorkai controlled the pace, the location, and the terms of every engagement. Point 2. The Vorkai's accumulation strategy worked specifically because it encountered responses instead of initiations. A force that only ever reacts is a force that is always behind, always catching up, always fighting the last position instead of the next one. Point 3. The Vorkai had never been hurt. Not slowed. Slowing was not hurting. Hurt, genuinely hurt. The kind of hurt that changes the way a living thing makes decisions. The kind of hurt that gets remembered. The kind that teaches a lesson the body does not forget even when the mind tries to. "You've been trying to stop them," Reyes said, "but you can't stop something that doesn't know it can be stopped. You need them to stop themselves, and they'll only do that when they learn something they've never learned before." The room was very quiet. "What is that?" Sereth said. "That they can lose something they can't get back," Reyes said. Admiral Tharrell, recovered from the Scar incident, operating in full political sharpness mode, raised the first objection. "Rules of engagement," he said. "The Coalition's foundational non-aggression doctrine governed first strike operations, and what Reyes was describing was an interior strike, a deep territory offensive into Vorkai space that had never been defended because no one had ever attempted to reach it, and launching that kind of action without full council approval and legal review would. How many systems have you lost in 8 months?" Reyes said. "That is not the relevant consideration when discussing foundational." "How many?" She said it the second time the same way she always said things the second time. Not louder, not harder, just with the particular quality of someone who has already decided that the third time is not going to happen. Tharrell stopped talking. The number sat in the room without anyone saying it, which was worse than saying it. Sereth looked at the star map on the wall, at the red spreading across it, 3 new marks added. In the last 6 days, the timestamps impossibly close, and then he looked at Reyes and at the single sheet of paper and at the 3 points written on it in small precise handwriting. "We'll put it to a vote," he said. Okafor did not attend the vote. He was on Deck 9 at the observation port, the one that faced the border, and he had been there for a while when Sova found him again. She had started checking on him, not as part of her assignment but because she had found, without entirely meaning to, that she wanted to know he was all right. He was standing at the port looking at the star where the third fallen system was, the third of the 6-day 3, the one that had dropped last, and his face had the flat cousin of sadness expression, the well-worn one, but underneath it something else was running, something Sova could feel from standing near him the way you can feel heat from something that is not visibly burning. "The vote's happening now," she said. "I know," he said. "Are you not going?" "Reyes goes to the votes," he said. "I go too," and he gestured at the observation port, at the star where the system used to be, at the nothing that was left. Sova stood beside him. She had run the numbers from the 3 fallen systems, civilian evacuation statistics, the numbers who had not made it out in time, and she had been carrying those numbers for days and they were heavy. Numbers, The kind that sat on the chest. Does it get easier? She said, and then immediately wanted to take it back because it was too personal a question for someone she barely knew. But Okafor did not seem to mind. No, he said, and then after a moment, you just get better at carrying it. She thought about that for a long time, standing there in the dark of Deck 9 with the fallen star in the window between them. The vote was not unanimous. It was close, closer than Sereth had expected, closer than Vreth had hoped, and when it passed, when the final count came in and operational authority transferred to Reyes, there was no celebration in the room, just the sound of 12 admirals sitting with what they had just decided to do. Vreth voted yes. He voted yes, and he did not tell anyone why. He wrote it in his private log later that night, in the entry that he kept separate from his observer report, the one that was only for himself. I voted yes because she is the only person in that room who has already survived the thing she is walking toward, not a version of it, not something like it, the actual thing, or something close enough that the distance does not matter. And I have spent 15 days watching her carry that history, and I have come to understand that she does not carry it as a wound, she carries it as a map, and right now we need someone who has the map asterisk. He read it back. He kept it. Down the corridor, in the small room she had been assigned, Reyes sat at her desk with the single sheet of paper and a new sheet beside it, writing in the same small precise handwriting, making new notes, preparing for what came after the vote. She worked until very late. She did not think about whether she was ready. Ready was not a category she used. There was the work, and then there was more work, and the line between them was just time. The briefing before the offensive lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes because that was how long Reyes needed. She had the plan in her head the way someone carries a route they have walked so many times that they know. Longer need to look at their feet, and she laid it out in clean, simple language that left no room for misunderstanding and no room for questions that were really just fear wearing the costume of strategy. 3 coalition fleets would move to the Vorkai border, visible, loud, drawing the Hive's attention and resources toward the edge where the fight had always been, while the lead ship, the Sen Ascendant, went the other direction entirely, toward the interior, toward the relay infrastructure that had never been defended because nothing had ever reached it. It was not complicated. The most effective things rarely were. Any questions? Reyes said at the end. No one had questions. Let's go. Do some work, she said. The Vorkai responded to the fleet movement the way they always responded, efficiently, massively, redirecting a significant portion of their border-facing forces toward the coalition ships that were making the most noise in the most visible location. And for approximately 40 minutes the plan was proceeding in the clean theoretical way that plans almost never proceed in reality. Then the Vorkai detected the Sen Ascendant's approach vector. Then the plan became something else. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Vorkai interceptor ships appearing from 3 directions at once, a closing pattern that every coalition tactical system read as retreat. Reassess, preserve the asset. This approach vector is no longer viable. The coalition fleets began pulling back. Standard doctrine. Preserve the formation. The Sen Ascendant did not pull back. Reyes narrowed. She took the ship into the response rather than away from it, into the gap that the Vorkai zone repositioning had created for exactly 11 seconds before the Hive recalculated and closed it. 11 seconds, a window that existed because the Vorkai had never needed to defend this space before, and their response geometry had a seam in it right there, right in that specific angle, visible if you knew how to look for seams. Reyes knew how to look for seams. She had spent a career looking for seams. 11 seconds was enough. It was always enough if you knew the seam was there before you arrived. The ground team breached the Vorkai relay station at 1,423 hours, 6 minutes after the Sen Ascendant broke through the intercept line, and Okafor's voice on the tactical comms was the thing that Sova, monitoring the channel from the operations center, would remember longest afterward. He sounded like a man narrating a walk through a familiar building. Entry point secure, he said, in the same voice he used to describe bad food. First corridor clear. There's a split at the junction. We are taking left. Left is clear. 2 contacts neutralized. Moving to the relay core. There's something in the secondary access corridor. Let me. Yeah, there it is. Secondary access clear. We have eyes on the relay core. He paused. The relay core is very large, he said, sounding mildly impressed, the way someone sounds when they find an unusually good parking space. Somebody put a lot of work into this. Then, charges are set. We are moving to extraction. Sova checked the audio 3 times to make sure it had not been corrupted in transmission. It had not been corrupted. That was simply how he sounded. She flagged the recording in her log with a note that said only, "Review this later when you have time to think about it." She did not review it until weeks afterward. When she did, she sat with it for a long time. The relay core detonated at 1447. The Vorkai hive mind registered the loss 0.3 seconds later, registered it in the distributed, simultaneous way of a hive, every unit feeling the absence at the same instant, the way you feel a sound stop after it has been running so long you stopped consciously hearing it. The hive had never lost interior infrastructure before. The hive had never lost anything it considered permanent before. The border-facing Vorkai units, the ones engaging the 3 coalition fleets, the ones that had been pressing forward with the patient terrible efficiency of something that had never learned the meaning of. Setback. Stopped. Not tactically. Not a feint. They stopped. And then they pulled back. 17 systems simultaneously, the red line on the coalition star maps contracting for the first time in 8 months and then contracting further, the Vorkai tide going out fast in a way that none of the coalition's models had predicted because none of the coalition's models had included the variable of what happens when something that has never been hurt finally is. The coalition war room erupted. Admiral Sereth, who had spent 8 months of careful measured language and highly concerning and composure under enormous pressure, embraced the nearest officer and did not appear to notice or care who it was. Someone was shouting numbers, the systems the Vorkai were vacating, the border distance increasing in real time, and the shouted numbers kept getting better and the room kept getting louder. Reyes sat alone at the tactical display. She was watching the red line contract. She was not celebrating. Vreth found her there 40 minutes after the room had emptied, after the admirals had moved to the formal response protocols, after the comms team had begun the transmission to coalition command, after the war room had shifted from shock to administration, and she was still at the display, still watching the red line, very still in the way that large animals go still. The situation has changed significantly, Vreth said, because he needed to say something and that was true. Yes, she said. He stood beside her. You are not celebrating, he said. No. He waited. She looked at the retreating red line for a moment longer and then she said, because they'll remember this. He did not immediately understand. The Vorkai, she said, they've just learned something. They didn't know they could be hurt before, and now they do, and something that learns it can be hurt starts thinking differently, it starts planning differently, it starts looking for the thing that hurt it. She paused. Same as we did, she said. Vreth did not ask what we meant. He knew what we meant. He had known for several days what we meant, had been quietly knowing it the way you quietly know something you are not sure you are ready to have confirmed. He stood beside her at the tactical display and they both looked at the retreating red line, the victory that did not feel entirely like a victory to anyone in that room who understood what had just been taught to something that had previously not needed to lear. That night, the 7 humans stood together at the observation port on Deck 9. All 7 this time, which had not happened before. They did not talk much. They stood and looked at the stars the way people look at something when the looking is the point, when there is nothing. Useful to be said that the looking does not say better. Okafor had his hand in his pocket, the pocket with the rosary he did not pray with and now with the mission patch from the relay station breach, which he had taken from the wall of the station before they set the charges because it had seemed wrong to blow it up without taking something first. He could not have said exactly why it seemed wrong. He just knew that it did. None of the 7 celebrated. It was not that they were unhappy, something had shifted today, something real and significant had moved in the right direction, but there was a quality to the end of a fight, any fight, that the 7 of them knew and did not need to say out loud to each other, a quality like the silence in a room where the music has just stopped, the moment between the last note and the applause where you are not quite back yet, where you are still partly in the thing you were in, and the version of you that existed before it is still trying to find its way back to the surface. The stars did not care about any of this. They never did. That had always been one of the more honest things about stars. The coalition called it a historic turning point. They put it in those words in the official communique that went out to every member system. **a historic turning point in the defense of coalition space**, and the phrase was technically accurate. And also missed the actual point in a way that Vreth, reading it in his quarters, found difficult to articulate even to himself. The Vorkai had pulled back from 22 systems total by the end of the first week. Not defeated. The Vorkai were not defeated, would not be defeated in any permanent sense for a long time if ever, but changed, recalculated, running a new model that included a variable the Hive had not previously needed to account for, and the political and military effects of that recalculation were still spreading outward through coalition space like rings from a stone dropped in still water. Negotiations began. The coalition opened a formal channel to the Vorkai through a third-party intermediary, the Sen Diplomatic Corps, who were very good at this kind of work, and the Vorkai, for the first time in 8 months, responded. Not warmly. Not with anything that looked like remorse or accommodation. But they responded, which was more than they had done before, and a response was a beginning, and a beginning was what the coalition had not had until now. The ceremony was scheduled for 14 days after the offensive. Full coalition honors, the Sen Order of Martial Recognition, the highest military distinction the coalition could give to non-coalition personnel, awarded once before in coalition history to a Thorellian rescue fleet that had evacuated a dying colony station in the early years of the coalition's formation, and the ceremony was held in the main assembly hall of the Sen Ascendant with every senior officer aboard and a live transmission to coalition command. The coalition president's speech ran 22 minutes. It was a good speech. It was well written and genuinely felt, and it described courage and sacrifice and the bond between allied peoples facing a common threat, and it used the phrase Earth's finest 4 times and the phrase warriors of remarkable valor twice, and all of it was true in the way that speeches about these things are usually true, true to the shape of what happened, true to the emotion of it, not quite true to the specific texture of the thing itself. Okafor sat in the second row behind Reyes and listened to the word *unknown*. The president had said, *Earth's finest stood with us and faced the unknown without hesitation *. Unknown. Okafor turned very slightly toward the soldier beside him, Diaz, who had been on the ground team, who had set 3 of the charges herself, and he said one word. *unknown*. Just the word. The same face he used for bad food, for slow briefings, for the particular institutional frustration of paperwork that asked the same question in 4 different ways. That face, and Diaz pressed her lips together very hard and looked at the ceiling. Vreth, 2 rows back, caught both of it. He understood 2 things at the same moment, why it was funny, and why it was not. Reyes accepted the medal. She stood at the front of the assembly hall while the coalition president placed the Sen Order around her neck, and she held her face in the expression she used for formal occasions. Present, composed, giving exactly as much as the moment required and no more, and when the applause came she nodded once, which was the acknowledgement she had decided on in advance. Then she walked back to her seat. She held the medal in her hand for approximately 30 seconds. Then she passed it sideways to Okafor without looking at him or saying anything. Okafor took it and put it in his pocket, the pocket with the rosary and the mission patch from the relay station, and it fit, or close enough, and he settled it in with his thumb and went back to listening to the rest of the ceremony. The coalition president kept talking. Neither of them listened particularly hard. Vreth spent 11 days writing his observer report. He wrote 47 pages. He submitted them. 3 hours later he recalled the submission. He spent another full day rewriting. He recalled that version too. He sat for a long time. The problem was not that he did not know what to say. He knew exactly what to say, had known since approximately day 6 of the human's presence on the Sen Ascendant. The problem was that what he knew did not fit cleanly into the categories the report was supposed to fill, the categories that coalition military intelligence used to assess allied forces, the categories built on the assumption that what you were assessing had a relatively normal relationship to war. Reyes's people did not have a relatively normal relationship to war. They had humanity's relationship to war, which was not normal by any external measure, which was the product of a species that had spent its entire developmental history fighting itself, not fighting external threats, not fighting things that were different and other and alien, but fighting the thing that was closest, most familiar, most understood, the thing that thought the same way and moved the same way and knew exactly where to hit because it had been built the same way, and surviving it, and learning from it, and carrying the learning forward into every room they entered for the rest of their lives, in the grip of a handshake, in the way their eyes went to exits, in the calibrated quiet of a voice that got softer the more serious things became. Vretha's final report was 6 pages. The conclusion read, *I recommend the coalition formalize Earth's military partnership at the highest available tier, not solely on the basis of tactical output, though that assessment stands without qualification. But because of the following observation, the humans we operated with had already survived a war before this one, most of them several wars, and they did not carry this lightly. They carried it the way load-bearing structures carry weight, not in spite of the load but through it, shaped by it into exactly the thing the load required. We did not send them into something that could break them. We sent them into something they already knew, and I find, having spent 31 days in their company, that I am deeply grateful they are our allies. And I find that I am equally grateful that I did not have to discover what the alternative would have looked like asterisk. He submitted it. He did not recall it this time. The shuttle was scheduled to leave at 0800. Vreth arrived at Bay 7 earlier than protocol required, earlier than farewell ceremonies typically demanded, and he was not entirely sure why until he was standing there and understood that he had wanted to be there when they came through the corridor, wanted to see them one more time in the specific way they moved through spaces that were not their own. They came in a group the way they had arrived, 7 people, the same 7, none of them wearing the medal, which had presumably distributed itself among Okafor's pockets, and the coalition personnel who had worked alongside them over the past 31 days. Were lining the corridor. Not for the ceremony was over, just lining the corridor, standing there, which was a different thing. Okafor stopped at Sova. She was standing near the end of the line and she had been trying to decide for 3 days what she wanted to say to him and had not landed on anything that felt right. And then he stopped in front of her and she did not need to say anything because he spoke first. "You did good work," he said. That was all. 4 words in the same voice he used for everything. The bad food voice, the grid reconfiguring voice, the relay station breaching voice, and somehow in that voice and those 4 words was everything he had to give. Which was not a small thing, which was in fact a very specific and considered thing coming from someone who did not give things carelessly. Sova would try to explain to people for years what those 4 words felt like to receive from him. The closest she ever got was this. It felt like being told you were going to be all right by someone who had excellent reasons to know what all right looked like from the other side. The shuttle cleared the docking bay at 0803. Reyes sat in the co-pilot seat and watched the Sen Ascendant fall away behind them, watched it shrink in the rear display until it was a shape among shapes, a ship among ships, the coalition fleet that had held while the red line contracted. And then she stopped watching it because there were reports to file, and after the reports she intended to sleep for a very long time. Okafor was already asleep. He slept in the way he did everything, without ceremony, with full commitment, the sleep of a man who had decided, at some point in his life, that the only thing he could reliably control about tomorrow was whether he was rested enough to meet it. His hand rested loose in his lap near his pocket. The rosary and the mission patch and the medal were all in there together, which was not a sacred arrangement or a symbolic one, it was simply what fit. Reyes glanced at him once. She filed her first report. Then she filed her second. Then she set her display to sleep mode and looked out at the stars ahead of them. Not the ones behind, the ones ahead, the direction of home, the direction of whatever came next, and she sat with them for a moment the way you sit with something familiar and demanding that you have chosen, on purpose, to keep choosing. Then she closed her eyes. The work was done. There would be more work. There was always more work. She slept anyway.